Hi, it's Mrs. Peeved again. I am back to record my son's birth stories. I'm going to do it probably in different videos. And this is my son Jeremiah, almost, let's see, no, 6 months. Pretty blue eyes. He has such bright blue eyes. I'm thinking he's probably going to have green eyes like his dad, or possibly uh, hazel ones that turn blue depending on what you're wearing, like his uncle, which is my brother. My brother has that. And then my husband has very light, bright green eyes. Mine are kind of hazel, but they're so dark, most people just think they're brown. I'm picky and I insist that they're hazel, but you know, I guess brown will work. Um, I'm here because I'm going to go ahead and talk about my son's birth stories before I forget them any further. My first son is already 2, and I'm pretty sure I've already forgotten some of his birth story, but I'm just going to talk and try and remember the rest of it because I want to kind of immortalize. I wrote down like some specific details, but like most of it I'm going to just talk and hope that it comes to me, and then I'm going to put it on YouTube as in order to save it, because I actually had a journal written out with his whole birth story that I was going to like save and then like present to his wife someday, because girls love those things and boys generally just don't give a rat's ass. But I lost that journal in the last move, so now I'm going to try this method of saving the birth story. Okay, EddieG. I found out I was pregnant shortly before Christmas of 2012. And we had been trying for a little over a year at that point to get pregnant. So I knew like immediately before you were supposed to. We were using the rhythm method to get pregnant, which is basically I knew when my ovulation was happening and whatnot, and just kind of was trying, and I was trying so desperately hard, and knew when my ovulation was happening and whatnot, and just kind of was trying, and I was trying so desperately hard, and because it took almost over a year, I was beginning to think that there was something wrong, but it was probably just the stress that I was putting on myself, because this guy was kind of an accident with birth control. So yeah, I'm thinking it was probably just the stress that took us so long to get pregnant with EddieG. But let's see, yeah, it happened December. I realized I was pregnant, and that was our New Year's present to our moms. We told them that we were pregnant, but they didn't really believe us at that point because I hadn't been to a doctor yet. And even though we had never given them false hope before, they're like, well, we're just going to wait until you see a doctor to make sure. I didn't see a doctor for like until I was 5 months pregnant. And by then, yeah, it was definitely noticeable. Well, not definitely, because it was my first kid. I wasn't like super showing, but there were definitely other symptoms such as morning sickness. Oh my god, the morning sickness was so awful. It was just horrible. I generally skipped breakfast, and then I would take a multivitamin with lunch, and it was just, the whole pregnancy was just kind of blah. I was kind of lethargic. I definitely took naps. I was working at Walmart at the time, and part-time because they wouldn't freaking hire me full-time, and yeah. After every shift, I would come home and take like a 2-hour nap before I would get up and like make myself something to eat and whatnot. And I was eating maybe once. I was eating once, sometimes twice a day. That was it, because I was just sick all the time. Well, we finally got in to see a midwife that was covered on my insurance, and she was a certified nurse midwife, not a licensed, but a certified nurse. And she had worked 10 years previous in a hospital, which was one of the reasons why I went with her. And she was in Plano, Bella Births. I would recommend her to anyone. She was pretty close to a hospital. That was another thing, is because my plan B of, okay, what if there's something wrong with the baby or something? And I definitely wanted to be near a hospital. That's something that people, when they find out that I'm very into not having births at hospital, are like, but what if something goes wrong? That's why there's a plan B. As long as the baby gets here healthy, that's what counts. At least that's what everyone says, until they realize that you didn't give birth in a hospital. And then they're like, no, that doesn't count. You shouldn't have taken that risk. Like, the hospital was literally right across the highway. That's why I chose that place. But here is my birth story. I was due September 8th. I worked at Walmart. I continued to work 5.5-hour shifts after the halfway point in my pregnancy. After I reached 20 weeks, I went ahead and signed a piece of paper saying I only want to work 5.5-hour shifts and for 5 days a week, because that was all my body could really handle at that point. And yeah, I had a little bit of trouble with iron. I ate healthy. I made myself eat healthy. I ate spinach every day. I counted my intake of protein in grams. My husband midwife and I got together and we wrote out a shake that my husband would make me every morning for health. And yeah, I mean, I took very good care of myself, which I found interesting. I was pregnant at the same time a lot of people are. And I found out, yeah, he's talking too. And I found out a lot of women will lie to their doctors. I was the only person I knew who was actually taking prenatals. And a lot of the argument was, well, if vitamins don't do anything for when I'm not pregnant, which the doctor says they don't, then why do I need to take prenatals when I am pregnant? They just make me feel yucky. And you can't really argue with that logic, which is why I hate it when doctors say vitamins don't do anything, because then they won't take them when they're pregnant either, which is not good in my book, but what do I know? All their kids got here healthy too, minus, the NICU stays. He's talking. Say hi, Jeremiah. Hi. He's drooling a lot. I think he's about to start teething. I mean, seriously, a little drool bucket monster is what this guy is. So I was due September 8th, and I worked up until September 5th, 3 days before my due date. That is when I wanted to go on maternity leave. I basically wanted to work until the baby dropped out of me, but you have to put a number on there. So I said, okay, fine, September 5th. And so I went on maternity leave for September 5th. That night, yeah. And after that shift, I lost my mucus plug. And so that night I was talking on the phone to my mom, and she's like, you lost your mucus plug? Well, that's not good. I'm going to come down there. I was like, well, it'll probably be days before I go into labor. But she came. It was a 4-hour drive, and she was there September 5th, probably around 6 p.m. Well, we had dinner, and we went ahead and went to bed. My husband was working night shifts at the time, and so I asked my mom, no. My husband was working night shifts at the time, so we just kind of went to bed around 8, which was normal for me at the time because I was just tired all the time. At 10:30, I kind of woke up and kind of was like, I think I might be in labor. I was kind of having like menstrual-like cramps, but it wasn't like severe. I usually had worse menstrual cramps, actually. So I wasn't too concerned. I didn't wake my mom up, and I was kind of up and down. I was kind of letting her sleep. At 2 a.m., I woke my mom and said, okay, no, I am definitely in labor. The contractions are getting closer together. They're getting stronger. And she's like, well, do you think you need to call your midwife? I was like, no, I think I'm going to let my midwife sleep because it's still going to be a while. But I went ahead and called my husband at 2. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be ready. I said, I'm in labor. I don't think it's going to happen. I think you can finish your shift. And his shift was until like 6 or 7 in the morning. I can't remember if it's 6 or 7. And he's like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, just go ahead and stay there. I'll call you if it goes into full-blown labor. But I'm not even 100% sure this is labor. It could be fake labor. And he goes, okay, whatever. Well, at 4:30, I was in quite a bit of pain. I was starting to get on all fours and kind of make the groaning noises to go, ooh, in order to kind of cope with the pain. And so that was the point I called my husband and said, okay, you need to come home. I called my midwife, and she was in a dead sleep. And honestly, later, she said she doesn't remember that she must have answered the phone in her sleep because I told her when my contractions were. And she was like, yeah, you don't need to call me for this. She goes, wait until the contractions are like 4 minutes apart and last a minimum of like 12 seconds. And they weren't at that point. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I went ahead and let her sleep. But my husband came home, and he was cleaning the car and was calling his family. His mom wanted to come up. So he called her at like 5 in the morning, was saying, hey, Carol's in labor. And she's like, well, what's going on? Are y'all deciding to go hospital last minute? Did she change her mind? Because my mother-in-law was kind of nervous about the whole birth center thing. And he was like, no, I'm outside cleaning the car. And she's like, you're cleaning the car. Baby's got to ride in a clean car. I should have done it earlier. I just didn't. Because he was a smoker at the time, and our car was disgusting. I mean, he'd roll down the window to smoke, but ash gets everywhere. So, I'm going to give this guy a bottle and see if that kind of calms him down. Here, do you want to sit? So, my husband was cleaning a car. It was like 5 a.m. My mom was helping me time contractions because, I was very meticulous. I wanted everything timed on the length between a gauge of 1 to 10 of how strong I thought they were and whatnot. And I was getting to a point where I couldn't let them talk. Around 7:23, I remember it because I wrote that down in my phone on Facebook. I called my midwife, and then I posted it. 7:23, I went back and actually found the post and put in labor because I called the midwife, and she goes, oh my God, yeah, you're in labor. at that point. And she's like, can you meet me at the birth center? Because I live kind of, she thought far away. It actually wasn't that far away if you get on the freeway. And it was like a 6-minute drive. Oh my God. Labor was not that bad. I could deal with the pain of labor. To this day, I can remember the most painful aspect of labor was sitting in a car with a seatbelt on driving. That was horrible amounts of pain. I cannot even describe to you the just incredible pain. My husband kept asking me, I was screaming. My husband kept asking me, do I need to pull over? Do I need to pull over? I was like, no, you need to get to the midwife or at least get to the hospital that's like right across the highway from her birth center. Because I was like, but the car ride, I think, sped along labor. And then we got around to the birth center a little before 8. I want to say like 10 till 8. And she got there and she let us in. And my mother-in-law managed to get there. I don't know how she got there in 3 hours. She lives a little bit further away. She must have drove like a bat out of hell, honestly. And then the waiting game began. Because she didn't expect me to go into labor, she put me with a substitute nurse midwife that sometimes helps her out when she's overloaded because there were several women there that morning. And so she called her in. So I was with a midwife that I didn't know or trust. So I think that kind of slowed labor a little bit. And the midwife that was my substitute, that I didn't even know her name. And she kept going, well, why aren't you ready to push? Why are you here if you're not ready to push? And I felt pressured to push, even though there was no pressure to push. I mean, emotionally, I felt pressure to push, even though there was no physical pressure to push. So I started pushing. That was a mistake. I didn't realize until later. I forced the baby down in a position. And yeah, it was not good. The last thing I remember was horrible pain. I screamed in my pelvic area, and that's the last clear memory I have. Everything else is kind of fuzzy. We did stay at the birth center for several hours. My son was born at 12:32, but it was finally because he was showing signs of distress that my midwife, and this is all without any type of pain meds or medical intervention, my midwife actually reached in and hooked, I don't remember if she said her index finger or her pinky, underneath his armpit and pulled him the rest of the way out because I pushed him to a point where he could have stopped breathing. And that's without him actually being ready to be pushed. I physically pushed him that far. And she's like, yeah, he could have stopped breathing and he was just sitting there and I couldn't get him any further out. So she actually had to reach in and physically pull him out without any medicine whatsoever. Not exactly a wonderful experience. On the other hand, as soon as he was out, a lot of the pain went away and I was so happy. And because I wasn't drugged up, I got to hold him. I got to make an immediate what do you call it? Breastfeeding latch. It was amazing. She helped me with that. And after about 2 hours, we started going, okay, we can go ahead and go home now. I sat up. The entire time I had been laying on the bed. Huge blood clot came unclotted and fell out of me, and I passed out. My husband says it was one of the scariest moments of his life. My mom said it was one of the scariest of hers. The doctor felt around that searing pain I had felt about 4 hours before was actually me physically pushing the baby out beforehand. We now realize in retrospect that the water bag had not broke. So I was pushing the water bag and the baby out. And because of that, he was kind of scrunched up and his elbow caught me. They had to take me to the hospital across the road. And the baby was completely fine. I had to receive 27 stitches and 2 blood transfusions, 2 pints of blood, because of all the blood I lost. And when people hear that, and the doctors were shocked. They were like, you did that without any pain medicine whatsoever. I was like, honestly, the loss of blood acted like pain medicine. I didn't even realize I was in pain until after I woke up from surgery of the stitches because it was internal. It was my internal labia. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And the doctor was like, I could have, honestly, he goes, the hole was deep enough. I could have put a golf ball in it and sewed it up and it wouldn't have bulged. That's how deep the tear was. I was like, oh, wow. Of course, he may have been exaggerating. None of them were, I have a feeling none of them liked the birth center next door, and a lot of them were not very happy that I came in from the birth center. And my midwife was upset. I was the first patient who she's had to take to the hospital in a very long time. But, she called it. My husband and mom knew it was going to happen. But that was plan B. I felt secure in that. My husband felt secure in that. My mom knew about it. And the midwife was kind of devastated. But, you know, sometimes things happen. And the baby was healthy, and I thought that was the most important thing. A lot of people don't like to hear his birth story because they're like, why would you risk that? And not only that, but with my last son, we actually did a home birth. We had a plan B. We knew which hospital was closest. If things did go bad, we knew who to call. We had an emergency plan list and who would take my oldest son if I had to be rushed to a hospital, who's going to be at the birth in case my son needs to be taken. So who can watch my son immediately if I had to be taken to the hospital. We made a whole plan, but because of that incident, I was told that I had nearly died by a lot of people. You nearly died with your first one. Why would you risk that with the second? I had 2 blood transfusions. I didn't lose any limbs or anything. My heart rate was fine. My vitals were fine. I lost some blood. But there was a second plan B, and that seems something that a lot of people are willing to forget, and that just bugs me, is that they're not willing to accept the fact that, you know, it was okay. It happened according to one of my plans. I mean, the water bag not busting bugged me. And after that happened with my second one, I now realize that my water bag just needs to break because for some reason I make unreasonably strong water bags for babies, which means they're not going to be infected by bacteria. So, yay! But yeah. And then EddieG was born at 12:32 p.m. September 6th at 7 pounds and 10 ounces and 20 inches long. Pulled out by the midwife. But it was a vaginal birth, and I was fine with it, and I don't think it was completely traumatizing. I'm happy with how it happened because I was able to do skin to skin and a latch and just calmly sit there and hold the baby while talking to my mother and my husband, who are sitting on the bed with me for 2 hours before I had to go to the hospital. The hospital was still traumatizing because they didn't like me holding my baby there because I was injured or something, and they were afraid because the pain that was going to drop him. So they constantly were taking the baby away from me and making my husband hold him, or they put him in this separate little like plastic box that they rolled in for me. And it was just, I did not care for it. But maybe it was just that hospital. I don't know. But that is EddieG's birth story, and I just wanted to share. Thank you for listening. Because